Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Believe in the Leap. Thanks so much for joining. I have a special guest in the house today, Mr. Adam Ross. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, thank you. Excited to
So,
be here.
so Adam and I connected on a really cool Slack channel called Dad Day, and we just got to talking about branding and marketing and nutrition and fitness and all those things, and had a great conversation. And I thought I would bring him on the show, let him share some of his knowledge and skills and story with you guys, and we just had a really good conversation. So, man, thanks for making time to hang out with us today.
Happy to do it, man. Yeah, we the connection was pretty quick on dad days. I feel like there's so many questions out there for dads, and it was nice to meet a fellow dad who had similar questions. And that's a whole nother community that's out there. That was great to find out about.
Yeah, you know what I love is I think not just guys, but when there's a group of people and there's a couple of shared interests, having those quick connections of like, hey, we should talk,
Yeah.
and just the doors that those open are pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing when people acknowledge that they don't know everything, and then all of a sudden people realize that, like, hey, I'm not alone in this, and then all of a sudden you can have this great conversation. So similar to what you're doing on the podcast, I think that it was really just another forum for that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I took a look. I remember you posted a couple links, and you said you were in the branding space. And guys, Adam's branding stuff is amazing. Like the way that he
Thank you.
thinks about brands and takes it to the marketplace and just the visual intensity of it from examples really blew me away because I obviously hear a lot of people that say, "Oh yeah, I'm a designer or I do logos," right? And that's one thing, but when you actually get someone that knows like experiential design and knows the psychology of it and it's executed with just precision and thoughtfulness. Like you can tell, it's like if you know, you know.
Thank you.
uh, so that was one thing that immediately stood out of like, oh, this guy is legit. This isn't a Canva designer.
Fortunately, I grew up before Canva was ever around, so that was probably out of necessity. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I got my start right out of college. I went to school in San Francisco for visual arts, and I mean, it was just from day one. Like I showed up to work and I was happy. Like I just knew that this was it for me from day one. And now 20 something years later, I'm still showing up to work going, this is great. This is exciting. And obviously, there's so much that's involved in the tools of what we do. But at the end of the day, like good branding is good branding, and you know it when you see it. So whether it's created in Canva or Illustrator or AI, like it's almost separate conversation as to like what a good brand is. And that's something that I'm like, I just feel so passionate about. Like if you can create a good brand, the story that goes with it, the visuals that go with it, the kind of like the concept of what you're trying to accomplish, and you could put all that together, again, regardless of tools, that's really what it's all about, and you can connect with the audience on that. I think it's amazing what brand has the power to do.
Yeah. So do you remember, Adam, when brand started becoming important to you? When it meant something of like it really struck the chord of this is what I want to pursue and get
It's
more detail
interesting.
on.
That's a good question. So, yeah, I mean, I don't remember as a kid necessarily feeling like, oh, Fisher Price is it because I got like, that like visual connection. It really never happened. It happened more gradually for me, and it happened probably later in life than I would have expected. But when I was growing up, computers, personal computers, websites, really like the early days of websites were starting, and the ability to play with graphics and put them on a page and then translate that into like what became just the very beginnings of business websites. That really was an interesting to me because I loved the technology at the time. I really liked computers. I really liked learning how to manipulate, pretty much anything to do with like the web and software. So the more I got into that, the more I started to realize the power of what I was doing. And it was kind of through that I realized that like what I'm really doing with websites is branding, and pulling together visuals and copy and layouts to make these stories ring true for these businesses. And it was only when I started doing that I realized like, oh, this is graphic design. And I remember talking to my parents about going to college and what I wanted to go to college for. and they were very like business oriented people. I mean, they understood going to school for business. And at the time, it just made sense, a la like, probably 5 years ago, and everyone was going for computer science or computer programming. It just, if you wanted to get a good job, business happened to be the thing that people really pushed towards. And I remember telling them, like, hey, I don't know if I want to go for that. I want to go like to art school. And I just don't think it really clicked for them, like that there was a commercial side of art that existed. I don't think I really understood how to like, discuss that with them. But it wasn't until I really showed them that graphic design is a very viable source of income. It's a very like commercially successful form of art that they got it. And fortunate for me that, I was able to convince them eventually and they let me get into it. But that's really kind of how my journey brought me to art school and then ultimately into to being a graphic designer and brand developer.
Amazing. And so part of like believe in the leap, even the name, we're talking about like taking that jump of like leaving security, leaving tradition and moving into something that feels a little bit unknown or has some uncertainty and you don't know fully what's on the other side. Can you talk about maybe that transition for you? So when you started, your
Yeah.
firm, um, how did you make that leap?
I think as you'll understand, we make that leap daily as business owners. There are just so many unknowns in what we do. But I mean, early on, it was, for me at least, because I had a good understanding of websites at the time, it was one freelance project to the next. It was really just kind of cutting my teeth project by project, figuring out what business really was and how people wanted to be serviced in a business. So in addition to figuring out the technology of it, the design elements of it, I was also figuring out the business elements of it. And I think that was just a great unknown for me. I really, I had no idea. So if you want to talk about a leap, it's really just figuring out as you go day by day. And it's not just the things that you're good at, but it's all the things that you're not good at that you probably don't have a choice. You either have to figure it out or go get yourself a job. And I was just willing to figure that out every step of the way. Um, so again, looking back, should I have been more fearful of all the kind of unknowns? Sure, but I think that's the beauty of being young and not having a lot of overhead and just being able to jump headfirst into just about anything. So I credit myself for not being scared and taking that risk and, going through the hard times of it. There are certainly plenty of months and years where you're like, shit, that paycheck is not coming, but I still have to make rent. But eventually, things sort of settle in and you get more comfortable with the ups and downs.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I love that. I think that's important to know too, right? It's not just one leap that you safely land on the other side and smooth
No,
sailing. It's
literally
it's
every
a
day.
literally every day. I love that.
Yeah.
Tell me about at when you were starting out, did you have mentors that helped you? Like, how did you shape your mindset to tolerate the daily leaps and the daily risk taking?
From the design standpoint, some of my teachers at school, I went to the Academy of Art and in San Francisco, and some of my teachers really became my greatest mentors. And that was my education in terms of design that really shaped a lot of how I operate and just the appreciation for what I do, because I think that's at the core of everything I go through with my clients. I just appreciate the power of it and understand it. So that's been something that I think was given to me by my teachers. And I think when people talk about the value of college or art school, it's not always the lessons. It's sometimes the people that you meet and the mentorship that happens within it. So again, there's plenty of learning to be done, through YouTube and online universities and things like that. But I think ultimately you do miss a little bit of that piece of who it, the day-to-day interactions that happen. Um, but I would say my parents really have taught me a lot about business. Both of them were business owners. Both of them were small business owners. That they were going through all the pains that I've gone through now as a business owner, which is, hiring people, firing people, people not doing what they say they're going to do, and all the crunch of financials happening. So they were, without necessarily sitting me down and talking me through it, I think I was witness to it so often that it just kind of grew in me.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how long ago, or I guess the question, how long have you been in that role of like day to day? leaping on your own, slaying the dragon, bringing it home? How long has that been now?
So my business AR design was essentially just a byproduct of a project I took on in college of like, hey, if you were going to brand yourself, what would it be? So in college, I was like, well, AR design, it kind of fits. We went through a bunch of names, but AR design was the thing that I was like, all right, this is going to work. This is fine. It's my initials, Adam Ross. Um, genius. Um,
You are
but
creative.
I know, right? Don't follow my lead. So, but that kind of stuck. And from day one out of college, I just built this business, again, day by day. And it's grown through a lot of variations between having more staff, less staff, freelance staff. And I've kind of gone to a very happy place now where I have a team of people that we really maintain a very small agency, but everybody kind of like brings their own skill set and ideas, and everyone carries their own weight. And I think that's the place where I got to where I was like, this is the right size for me. So I've definitely gone through those growing pains of like, hey, why not be 100-person company? And I think the wheels fell off that bus pretty quickly when I realized just how much management, layers have to exist for that to happen. So it just wasn't a skill set that I necessarily wanted to try to take on. And I realized it was time for me to just scale back to what I was good at, work with people that I really enjoyed working with, and focus on the product and less about the growth.
Yeah, that's great, man. I love that. I would do something very similar where, I get up to maybe 15 people and then quickly realized even that for me, it's like I am not personally built for being a manager of a bunch of people. I suck as a manager.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. Yeah. Again, it gets back to kind of, and I don't know if this happens when you're young, but it certainly happens as you kind of go through a lot of these different roles in life that you recognize that, what your strengths are, and you can acknowledge it and you can accept it and you can say, hey, this is just not my strong suit. And either you bring someone in to kind of fill that gap. In my case, I brought my wife, not into the business, but into my life. And she's like rounded me out as a human being so much. And I think in business, it's the same. You can bring on people to fix some of the shortcomings that you may have personally, or you can just, reshape the business to fit what you're good at. And I think that's kind of what worked for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, very well done. So tell me about like when you're getting your day started, do you have any I love asking like the morning routine question, like when you're starting the day to get things going, to get your brain and your body moving. Do you have anything that's worked really well for you?
I think, taking care of myself has definitely been in the past 10 years something that I've been really focused on. And again, that goes back to my wife who trains diligently and really figuring out a fitness routine. And I'm not, the super like hyper fit person, but I do feel like physical fitness for me has been something that really allowed me to show up better day by day. Again, I've got 3 young kids, and they take a lot from you, in a very positive sense. But, if you're not able to take care of yourself, then you certainly can't take care of them the way that you would want to. And I think physical fitness has been a really positive endeavor for me. I also do a light amount of journaling. So I have a book, every morning I kind of fill in how I'm operating and just some gratitude points and little things like that that just kind of help ground me. And that's something I've been doing for, probably 6 months now. And I feel like that's been a nice addition to not just getting to work and immediately jumping into emails and starting to like, just power through. It's given me a moment to kind of slow roll into work and also just reflect on the day. And I think that's been great.
That's awesome. And that's a great segue into you have a supplement company too that you started, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's an interesting story in that like I didn't expect to wind up in a supplement business. The truth is my main job, AR design, we work with consumer packaged goods a lot, food, beverage, hospitality. So, a lot of my unique insight and knowledge is into consumer brands and kind of what, they can do and how they work and what, makes them successful. And I've always wanted to leverage that into a business. And then, kind of in a much more roundabout, backwards way, I started taking supplements because, again, as part of my fitness journey, I was like, maybe there are some gaps in what I'm eating that could really be helped along by the supplements. And I started taking supplements, and I started doing a lot of research because that's just my mindset. It's like, similar to what we talked about in business. If you don't know, you got to figure it out on your own. So I really did a lot of research and was kind of just self-testing a lot of different things. And I got to a point where I found there was literally just a day where I was like, holy cow, I feel better. And it was like not an intentional kind of like inflection point. It was really just like, holy shit, I feel good. And I was like, maybe it's obviously the combination of things. I mean, I always say like healthy eating, exercise, good habits, good sleep, all that is really at the core of any kind of, feeling well. But then this whole supplement thing really kind of, I found a combination for me that just made me feel much better. And I was like, huh, maybe this is the thing, and again, it goes back to like, I didn't expect myself to want to be in a supplement business, but I did feel like I was at a point where I felt good about what I could offer people. And it wasn't coming at it from a kind of a perspective of like, I have the only answer for you. This is really, I have something to, just like the word says, supplement, what you may be doing. And I felt good about it. So I launched that about a year ago and have really gotten the wheels turning now. And just, yeah, I'm just here to help people try to pick the right supplements, not all the supplements, just a couple.
Is this the first product that you've launched that was outside of AR design that you get to almost, did you treat that supplement company like a client? Get to kind of go from start to finish?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I put myself through my own paces, and again, I have a small team at AR Design who I involved in the process, and they kind of, tested me along the way and made sure that we were making the right decisions. But yeah, this is the first product I've brought to market for myself, and I feel really good about it.
So curious, like when you were taking yourself through that process, was there anything that you were enlightened on as you were going through there to be like, ooh, maybe we should change this or refine this or make it better since you got to see it kind of from the inside out
Yeah.
instead of the outside in?
I mean, the beauty of AR design and what we do is that so much of what we create exists, on the brand side of things. It doesn't exist on the day-to-day business and execution side of things. So what we do is we kind of create all these beautiful things for businesses to use, whether it be, packaging, logos, websites, social media assets, but we hand it to them at some point and say, now you have to actually do the business side of things. So there's a handoff there, and we don't necessarily have to get into the weeds of, inventory and suppliers and all the things that make a business run. And really, for the first time now, I'm at the place where I have to worry about those things too. And that was the eye-opening part, because I think what people don't realize, and this kind of gets into the world of AI and how many good ideas there are out there and how much AI can sort of help supplant those ideas and create more, momentum with those ideas, is at the end of the day, there comes a point where a lot of work has to still get done. The AI can only do so much, and outside contractors can only do so much. But at a certain point, the operations that have to happen to run a business are real. And I think that was the eye-opening part for me, because there's just so many things that I have to do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the business stays afloat.
Yeah. Yeah. Super enlightening. Um, Especially as you guys get to do kind of the fun part, right? The creative
Yeah.
ideation and
Yeah.
all the like the experiential, like how's this going to make people feel? And the business owners like, how am I going to have this make me money? And trying to
Yeah.
combine those two.
Yeah, that's always the tough conversation. And I always try to frame it like, how is this going to make you money? Not how much this is going to cost you, because if you only worry about
Yes.
the cost, then obviously it just, you feel it differently. So we always try to frame, you know, our goals around, how is this going to benefit the business?
Love
What
it.
are the income sources that are going to come from this, the new ideas and revenue streams that will come from this? And I think once that happens, you start to have a different conversation with a business owner, because unfortunately, business owners are so used to writing checks that they don't want another one to write.
No, no. And it's a little bit hard too, right? Like what we do around the branding world, it feels subjective sometimes, right? It feels like, is this necessary? And the KPIs and the ROI, there's not a direct like, if I use this color, you will grow by X%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a
There's no
lot of
correlation. I
trust.
mean, there are tools obviously to do some of that, but not end to end. And you can't, and it's not always, it's quantitative. It's not as like direct as you want it to be. And I always talk to my business owners and say, to me, it's those anecdotes that you hear along the way where someone says, "Oh, I saw your product on this shelf," or "I saw
Yes.
your ad in this." Those are the moments where you really have to pay attention because it's very hard to get that kind of, direct feedback from people. So when you have those moments with someone, dig into that and say, "What did you think when you saw it? Where was it on the shelf that you ran across that? Did it make you stop and think like that's something I would buy?" Those are really good, moments of feedback that you can get. And, in addition to all the data that you can try to collect, I think that's really what you want to pay attention to the most.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, something I've been dying to ask you. Um, so in the world where we have AI and tech and everything is becoming less and less human connection, I would love to hear your thoughts or philosophy on like the importance of brand, like the soul of the brand, like as we're getting more and more tech and computerized and disconnected, um, what role does a brand play today? Like if there's someone out there listening that is maybe asking like, I've got a logo, but I don't really understand brand, and I don't even know if that's important to me. Why should I
Mm.
pay attention to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the primary reason is just the saturation these days of companies out there, and there's just so many people that you're competing with on so many platforms that without a brand, without a story that people can connect with, it's nearly impossible to get heard these days, unless you have, $1 million budgets for advertising. Um, so I always say first start with just a quality offering. Whatever you do, if you're not doing it really well, it's really going to be hard to be successful. And that comes down, that across the board from the dry cleaners down the street to, the multi-million dollar company. If you can't deliver a good product, time and time again, then don't worry about your brand, because the first thing you really just have to do is run a good business. But if you can do that, if you have a good offering, if you have good people, if you have a good product, and you wrap a good brand around that, and you tell that story really well, the natural inclination of people is to want to share that. So, and people do connect with brands that they feel good about and that tell a little bit about them through the brand. So the reason someone might wear Patagonia is because Patagonia not only makes a good product, but they also give back in ways that that person might feel good about, you know? So they're able to take brand and product and put those two together and kind of make it a natural, advertising tool for themselves. So brand really has that power where if people don't understand what your brand values are, if they don't understand what you're trying to accomplish through your offering, then there's really no story for them to sell to their friends or family or other people along the road where they're like, this is why I wear this thing. This is why it's cool to me. So you're really missing a very natural marketing tool that it's been around forever. I mean, you look back at the days of cigarettes and kind of how they were able to make, cigarettes cool through movies and advertising. It's not all that different. I mean, the power of a brand is very much the same as what it was, from the early days. It's just now we have, 10x, 100x the amount of brands trying to do it, and the platforms require a brand to really operate at 100% to be able to get that across.
Yeah, I love that. So, offer is the most important part. You said make sure you've got a great offer, a great product, great team. That has to be like stabilized first, and then the
Yeah.
brand on top of it.
I mean, again, they obviously there is an order of operations. You can't launch a company without a brand. So it's not that I say like, hey, just start with whatever you got and work on the business, because I do think they go hand in hand. but there are plenty of times where I'll meet with businesses, and I've gotten to a point where I'm fortunate enough where I don't have to work with everybody that walks through my door. You know, there was certainly a time in my career where if you walk through my door, I was doing everything I could to get your business. But I've gotten to the point now where I know that I want to work with good people. You know, I want to work with people who appreciate what we do, and you know, our ideas. They don't just kind of, you know, throw stuff on our desk and expect us to use it and work with it. Um, but also people that run good businesses. If I get a bad feeling about the type of operation they're running, whether or not it's how they treat their people, how they treat their customers, how they look at their customers, you know, what their goals are for the business, if they're not aligned with my values, it's not going to really deliver a good product for either of us. And I've gotten to that point now where, if, you know, if I get that spidey sense of like, hey, this is probably not the kind of business I want to work for, I'll find my way out, you know. And I think that's really what I'm talking about. It's like I want to work with good people, and people want to buy from good people, you know. So
Yeah,
that's really at the core of that.
that's good. So if someone listening has a company and they really don't know the difference between like logo, brand, they're maybe asking themselves like, do I have a brand? Maybe accidentally have a brand and didn't know it. Um, if you were having coffee with them and they asked that question to you, how would you guide them or coach them on knowing if they have a brand or what to do next?
One of the most common things is, you know, I'll ask about what are your, like, the brand values. And I think that, you know, that's a rather esoteric question, and most people don't really understand what I'm asking. Like, what's your core philosophy? Very often I get back, hey, I want to be, you know, good at customer service, and I want to deliver a better product. And my first response to that is everybody says that. That's not core values. Almost any business will tell you that same thing. It goes beyond that. It digs deeper. And if you as a business don't really know what that is, or you can't, you know, explain it to someone, then you don't really have the type of brand, you know, structure that you need. You need to be able to, um, you know, tell that story that goes beyond just the base level of like, hey, we're good to you, and we want to be here for the community, because it really needs to be about more than that. And they need to take more away from your brand than that. Um, you know, if you're doing a good business and you feel good about what you're delivering, then it's just about telling that story a little bit better.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I, you know, I will say, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I just need a logo. And I think that's where the misconception between what a brand is versus a logo. You know, a logo is really just a visual representation of your company. It's not a brand. A logo is something to put, you know, on a website or in an email signature, but it doesn't really tell the full story of who you are, and what you're trying to do for, you know, the greater good of the business world. So, if you don't have that, or can't really relate that to people, then you need to take a step back and say, okay, I really want to think a little more about what my brand is and how I can communicate that, both through my website, through my social media, through my product offerings too. You know, where are the places that me being, you know, a more natural product, a higher quality product, you know, whatever it is, how can I do more of that? And how can I get that more to the niche of people that are already buying my stuff?
And I'm guessing part of your process too is maybe helping people understand that, like their brand archetype or their brand values, knowing how they want to be perceived in the marketplace, not just what's your favorite color.
No, so much of this, that, and it's built into our process, is discovery. And it's like, I don't know a better word for it, because discovery is really what it is. It's just, and it's an exciting process for us, you know, as people learning about your industry, but also for you, because all of a sudden you get to sit down and really think through, and be asked tough questions about your business. And it forces you to kind of slow down for a second as a business owner, because business owners tend to run a million miles an hour and don't slow down and really think, and kind of put down what it is that you're trying to accomplish, short term and long term. You know, having a 5-year goal in place is something I find just, you'd think every business has it, but like most often than not, people are just trying to get to the next day. So really putting a kind of a 5-year goal in place and then figuring out how the brand that we're going to create is going to deliver on that goal. Where you want it to be. Do you want to open more locations? Do you want to franchise? Do you want to have, products show up on grocery store shelves? And what do we need to think about during the branding process that's going to help that? So if you are franchising and you're going to be opening up in, 10 different markets, does that brand that we're designing for you work across 10 different markets, or does it only work in the Northeast because it's more of a Northeast aesthetic? So those conversations during discovery are just so eye-opening for everybody involved. And that really gets into telling your brand story and then developing the visual assets that support that. And then figuring out, very often right after we're done with the creating of the brand is what do we need to do to follow up on that, to start developing, on that 5-year plan. If you want to create new products or introduce new products, let's start getting some vendors on board and find some new opportunities in the market for you. If you want to start, curating a stronger newsletter list, where are those people and how do we get them to sign up? What kind of offerings do we make for that? There's just so many different opportunities to get into once you have your brand told, and we'll help people through that. We'll help people understand kind of where those opportunities lie.
So true or false? You can have a good logo and a bad brand,
Yeah, absolutely.
and the opposite is true
Absolutely.
as well, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of good brands with bad logos. Yeah, for sure, for sure, and that's a perfect place for us to jump in and fix. Yeah, and the fun part about branding is that when it's good, people get it. It exists almost on a subconscious level, which is really interesting. And I think that's part of the power of social media is that we do so much flipping through things that our brain has now been triggered to spot good from bad. And it almost makes that decision in a fraction of a second. Is this a brand that um, I perceive as a quality brand, or is this a brand that looks like a slop together quick startup that, maybe just launched a couple months ago? And we've gotten very good at perceiving that. So fortunately for me, I think people need a good brand just to kind of get the wheels moving. And I think if not, I mean, I see so many good businesses that don't have that brand in place that get hampered by it early on.
Yeah. What do you think is important? So for a new business that's just starting, trying to like just get their product to market, getting a few sales into their belt, do you feel like the timing of branding, is it more important that they get that done at the beginning to get those pillars established? Or is it better to get that done after they're kind of off the ground and running a little bit? What would you recommend?
I think it's so hard to start a business these days and cut through some of the noise that not having a good brand in place is going to it's going to hamper you more than than it is worth waiting. I can't see starting a business in this day and age without having a brand that you feel confident about. That doesn't mean you have to spend more than you can afford to get there. But if you feel like the thing that's hurting you the most is your brand, the market is going to perceive that first. They're going to notice that. And I don't think, as much as it does sound like I'm just selling my services, I don't think you can really move too far beyond that startup phase without a good brand in place. So, again, I'm always cognizant because I am now a person who's starting a business as well, of the costs involved and understanding that branding is just one of those things that you hope you can get by without. And I would just say, tell people to really look at the competition out there, look what they're offering from a brand standpoint, and try to put yourself, in someone else's shoes. Would you trust your brand over these bigger brands with what you have in place? And there is a flip side to that, which I think is also very exciting. And that is, and I tell people this, I can make you look like a brand that's been around for 10 years. I can make you look like a heritage brand that's been around for 3 generations through good branding and give people that warm, fuzzy feeling that this is a family owned establishment, or this is, there's so many potential benefits of a strong brand that I could take a startup, someone who doesn't have all that history, and imbue it into the brand, that all of a sudden people are buying things from you that they might not have if they knew you were a startup. So there's kind of that cheat code to branding too, where if you're really polished, they're going to think you're much bigger than you might be.
Yeah. One line I heard a long time ago that I think is relevant to this too. It's the idea of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so um, I think that's true. Like how I've explained this to people before is if they see that you don't really care about your brand and your website and you're not really taking time, how is that going to make them feel about how you're going to take care of them or your product? Like to your same point, is it going to also feel kind of like rushed and uncared for and just quickly put together? 'Cause it's like, man, if they don't even care about this, they're probably going to even
What
care
else?
less about
Right.
their
What else are
product.
they not? Yeah. What else are they ignoring during the process that are, is potentially going to get me food poisoning and end me up in the hospital? Yeah. I agree. Again, it gets to that, so much of this exists on a subconscious level where you don't even
Mm,
really stop and think about these things, but it definitely exists. And, a good example of this was I was working with a brewery and they were opening up in a new space and they were very excited. They really had put a ton of money into the establishment. And they had taken a location that for many, many years had sort of just rotated through businesses. We all know those places that have like come and gone. It's just that one location that for whatever reason is just not working. And on day one, I'm like excited to go into the brewery and kind of take it all in. And the first thing I see is that the tile right where the threshold is for the brewery is cracked. It was one of those things where I don't know if the business owner had ever seen it. I don't know if they had thought about it, but it was the first thing I said to them. And after the congratulations and I'm so excited for you, I was like, that tile needs to be fixed because it sets such a weird first impression before you walk in the door that there's a cracked tile at the very entrance. And that's, it is again, how many people are going to see that tile and think through what it is about that that's a little bit uncomfortable versus will just inherently kind of take that in as part of the overall, attention to detail. So I think that exists anywhere, everywhere, whether or not we perceive it and know that we're, responding to it, or if it just kind of happens. But um, attention to detail really is just should be a core value of everyone who's trying to operate a business.
yeah, that's good. I really like what you said about the subconscious mind because I do think a lot of times people, obviously designers can understand it, but when people see things and it's like, I'll know it when I see it, right? That's the kind
Yeah.
of,
Oh yeah.
um, but I think to your point, like the good branding, good design, good experience, people can't articulate why it's making them feel a certain way. Like I went to this website, it's got this heritage look. I don't know what it is about the colors, the typography, the word mark, but it feels like a safe place. And it's the combination of those elements that subconsciously we take in that are firing off all these little trust signals
Yeah.
that we
Exactly.
don't know why they're firing, but it's like it's all happening. And I think that's the magic of what you guys do, right? You can kind of engineer those those
Those
feelers.
feelings. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's exactly kind of what we're trying to accomplish. And part of, that discovery process we talked about earlier is understanding who we're trying to speak to. Who is the person on the other end who's going to be looking at your website or at your product? And what language are they speaking, from a visual standpoint? What are the triggers that are going to excite them? Um, that's what brands are doing. Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. Tell me put you on the spot here. What are some of your favorite brands? And it doesn't have to be necessarily things that like you're wearing or you buy, or it could be, but maybe just ones out there that you feel like, man, they are just doing a great job of storytelling and holding values true. Who
Yeah.
who comes to mind?
There's a lot of menswear brands that have done a very good job of coming up lately that have really kind of like Sendero is one of those where they do a lot of Instagram marketing, but they're creating products that are good quality and they appeal to the inner adventurer in me, the one that like wants to go, live out on the range. And there's all this sort of connection points for me about being more outdoors. And I think some of the brands that I'm connecting with are ones that give you that sort of mental picture of like, you know, escapism, being able to remove yourself from the day to day. And again, it gets back to the subconscious. Like that's where my mind wants to be. I want to be out, away from the desk and roaming free. So I think those are the brands that I'm connecting with. But um, I really like brands like Herschel that are kind of authentic and really just make decent quality products, but with design focus. So those are the kind of brands that I think are both leading edge in terms of storytelling, but also um, product design.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think about so for it's maybe someone listening here that is a little bit more established, they feel like they've got a decent brand, decent logo, but they're inside of their own system. So they're just kind of in this echo chamber of what they think. What would be a good pressure test for them to know, do I actually have a good brand in the marketplace? Do I have like, besides what my friends and family are telling me,
Yeah.
how do they know if it's working?
It's always good to talk to people like me, and I'm always the first to raise my hand when someone says, "Hey, can I just sit down and pick your brain?" Because I'm very open like that. I'm always happy to discuss branding with people, either over a cup of coffee or a Zoom or something like that. But then the real pressure test, I think, for a brand is really just in part by, are you innovating? Are you continually pushing yourself to try new things? Are like, the things that made you good early on, are you continuing to push the boundaries a little bit and try new things and fail, the same way that you were willing to fail early on trying new things? Because I think that's where a lot of businesses get stuck. Once the brand is positioned and in place, is getting a little too comfortable with, where they are and protecting it too much and not really wanting to say, let's try something a little stupid here, a little. And I love, I'll always say to my clients, because I always feel like the ideas that pop into my head, I'm always like, God, this might be a really bad idea. But because I think sometimes those really bad ideas are exactly the ones that people like to hear,
Mm,
because it's not what the AI is going to feed you. The AI is not going to feed you a bad idea. They're only going to feed you what everyone else agrees is a good idea. So, in the age of AI, it's that like that moment of not only this is, a kind of a maybe a bad idea, but what are you going to do with that idea? And how are we going to spin that idea together into something that actually is going to be a great idea, but it just needed a little bit of, a little bit of manipulation. So, to me, I think those are the conversations you can have with a brand that's already formed, that's running and operational. What can we do that's going to make things a little uncomfortable and push you a little bit?
that's good. That's really good. I like that a lot. So when you finish a branding project and then you leave it with the team, um, I get that you don't want it too controlled, and I love the idea of thinking outside of the box. How do you give confidence to the team you're passing it to that they're
Hmm.
going to know what to do with it? Like,
Yeah.
how do we not
I,
screw
I
this
mean,
up?
I don't know if I have that right answer. There, unfortunately, part of the business that I exist in is you have to hand off your baby at some point, and
Yeah.
not everyone is as good a caretaker of that brand as you would hope. It can get off the rails. Again, we can provide all the structure and and brand guides and voice and color palettes and all that stuff, but again, it depends whose hands it gets into. And in many cases, if possible, we will stay on board in some fashion to just kind of manage things, which is a great place for us because it allows us to continually ideate with them and take all that discovery process that we went through and just continue to work with it, and it doesn't just end once the brand is developed. But the honest answer is that, yeah, sometimes it just goes off the rails. And it happens a lot more easily than you would believe.
Yeah. Do you believe, like, in a smaller organization, let's say 25 to 50 people, um, do you believe it's the founder or CEO's job to kind of be the brand, like the keeper of the brand and the values, and to ensure that everyone is aligned to the beat of the brand? Or at that point, is there an actual brand manager or someone that's helping keep that vision clear?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can happen at a lot of different levels. And I think what I always encourage, people, when we do hand them this brand, is before anything goes out the door, is really do your double check to make sure that it meets the brand standards. I think one of the challenges with branding for any company is people tend to want to chase the shiny new thing that um, just came across their desk, whether it be a new style, a new tweak that they can do to their formatting, or like a new font that they can introduce into their document, or places like Canva. I will admit are very powerful and are not all that bad. But at the same time, just because you have a font menu with, 3,000 fonts in there doesn't mean that you should just be grabbing new ones every time. It gets back to like, there are many points at which, a business is going to release something, whether it's an e-blast or a new product or a new page to the website, where people, the more brand conscious people should be like, hey, I've just never seen that color before. Or why are we using that kind of photo before? We've never used that before. And having that moment to say, right now, this is not our brand, and we're only going to do ourselves harm by introducing new elements into the brand and create, confusion in the marketplace. It's really hard to stay true to a brand, especially at the early stages when all these new shiny things are coming at you, where, you have to grab a stock photo from a place that you've never used before, and it doesn't really look like what you're trying to sell. So hopefully you have people internally that can spot that and can call you on it before it goes out the door. So it really just exists at all the different levels where people are more brand aware. But having a brand guidebook, and I think it's an important element of onboarding your team, or if you're redoing a brand for a company, making sure everybody spends a little bit of time with it, understanding, why we make these choices that we do. What is that style of picture do to push our brand versus that style of picture, and educating them on the brand, because then they'll understand what it is, how they can carry that brand forward. Because nothing that we do in terms of, color choice or typography or styling is just, random. It's not done because we just feel like it looks good. It's done with the intention. So if you can carry that on, the brand gets stronger and people's confidence in the brand gets stronger. And ultimately, everybody's happy.
Great. I love that. Um, Gosh, I just had a question and it just slipped me. Um, Shoot, what was it? Maybe it'll come back. I think it had to do with just the the importance of brand. I lost it, but is if someone is working on, yeah, like the product, do you feel like more time needs to be spent on the product first? Like, is it product led brand or brand led product?
I think these days it's so much brand led product, and that's a very tricky space to live in, because I think these days you're finding so many products that are coming to market just based off good branding,
Yeah,
before they worry about the product. And I think that's, it's both a positive and negative to the world we live in,
yeah,
because we're so quick to order things online and not feel them before we ever order them, or, like interact with them before we place that order, that there are a lot of people who can get away with good branding and not having a good product. And, you know, obviously there's reviews systems in place. And we, again, it gets back to that subconscious. We use all of those subconscious tells to try to warn ourselves before we click order, is this a real product that's going to be better than the thing that's been around for 20 years, or is this just really good branding wrapped around a very, average product? Um, so unfortunately, I do think that brand can lead a lot of products these days, especially in spaces that are that have not gone through a lot of growth, or just, I was looking the other day, someone was trying to sell, and I'm sure you might have seen this, like high-end nail clippers. And I'm like, all the red flags go up, because I'm like, is my nail clipper even that bad? The one that I bought at the drugstore for $1, but like their branding is really good. And it's like German blades. And it's like, your nail clipper is dull. And then they do like a zoom in of your nail. And I'm like, oh my God, my nails look like that. And then like I had to shake it off and go, okay, I don't need a $30 nail clipper. I don't think the innovation that they've created is worth, that extra price, but it gets everyone. It can work. So it just means that we have to be more cautious.
yeah, that's so good, man. So, so
Beware $30 nail clippers.
yeah, I know. I think I have seen those before too. Something that I've really appreciated in the branding space too is the super niche brands, right? So like as um, you know, like whatever thing that you're into, having specific brands that are catered so clearly to a very super or sub niche. And that's my absolute, like the brands that I love are the ones that are less generalist and more specialist, that are just dialed in because they're almost like they know what you need before you know it, and they're not just guessing on different things, right? Like one of my favorite running brands is a company called Rabbit, and all they do is make gear for runners. And they actually, their team shows up at ultra running endurance events. They've got a tent. They actually have like pins for the race that you're at.
No, cool.
And they've just embraced this lifestyle and culture. Um, but it's not all sports, right? It's easy to say like, I'm going to be a sports brand and do sports clothes, like
Yeah.
general, as opposed to we're only focusing on this one activity that's a little bit niche, and we're going to make sure everything we make is perfected for them and with great product. But to me, like from a branding standpoint, I love when to see those super niche brands that are just dialed into a very target
And
customer
I mean,
base.
that's the beauty. We always talk about the downsides of, the connectivity and internets and screens and all that. But that's really the beauty of the internet these days is that those niches, you might call them a niche, but they're much bigger markets than you realize, and, you know, I don't know, back in the 1900s, if you opened a store for long distance runners, you'd be like, okay, your target audience is about maybe one or two people in that entire town.
Yeah,
But like that niche, in these days is could be millions of people. So the idea that, you're creating a niche and you're potentially harming yourself really is not the case anymore. And I think if anything, it's only going to help you kind of create a community around your product. So more and more, I encourage businesses to really kind of niche down and really focus in on a specific person or a group of people because that it might be the only way to cut through the noise these days.
yeah. Well, even just a quick story. I was at a in-person networking group just yesterday, and we were doing our quick 30-second commercials, and I started using language about um, who I'm looking for. Like my ideal client is X, and I was very specific in a niche, being like, I'm looking for um, endurance companies that want to tell their story and that need to grow with leads and revenue. And I got feedback afterwards of just people like being able to identify like, hey, thanks. I'm actually thinking of people that I know in that industry, as opposed to like the Mary Kay representative, right? It's like anyone who has skin and can fog a mirror, I would love to help.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to what I was saying about, not trying to be everything to everyone and finding
Yes.
the type of people that you want to work with. It's so much more powerful than that person who's just, we've all been at those networking meetings, whereas that one guy who just floats through everybody,
Mm,
shakes everybody's hand, is looking over your shoulder to the next person that they're going to greet. And it gets back to like, do you want to be the business that tries to get everybody in the room, or do you want to find those three people that are like really interesting people and you want to work with those people? And I think that's
absolutely.
where the power is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. Have you read any of Seth Godin's books?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
He's one of those gurus that it'd be hard not to. He's written so many books, but also, yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that he writes on a level that's very easy to understand and connect with.
Yeah. He's got a really obviously a lot of things about like tribal leadership and tribes and kind of talks about that same thing. It's it's like if you don't like what we have, like good, this isn't for you. That's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
I think that's what I love too about branding is when you can be so polarizing on who you're for. Look at like Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
they're aggressive in their marketing and their branding and their walk-in experience with like, you know, guns and eagles and sawed in half Jeeps in their store.
Yeah. And they lean into it and then there's no apologies. Yeah. I
No
think that's
apologies. Yeah.
exactly it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, all the power to them. There's plenty of moms who probably look at that and they go, that's not, I ain't buying that coffee. and that's okay, because then there's going to be plenty of other people who walk down and go, that's the kind of brand that I want to buy their coffee. And what coffee and guns have to do with each other, I have no idea, but that's okay, because if you can make that connection with the person who
That's
likes
right.
to drink coffee and carry a gun, then by all means, go for it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of those out there. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So kind of wrapping up here, Adam, if you were to give just a tip, like let's say like some of my listeners on here are different spots in their business and different stages of life, but hopefully, guys, listeners, you've got your wheels turning a little bit about brand and story, the importance of it, not just having a commoditized product that is the ultimate race to the bottom, but actually having a story that you can wrap around your product or service and identifying a niche and taking it to market in kind of a vulnerable way where it is more story driven than it is more of this functionally solves a problem at the lowest cost. Because in my mind too, like that is a near impossible game to win and not a fun game to play.
Yeah, the
Um,
race to the bottom when it comes to pricing products is really it's not a winning scenario these days. It's very hard to compete.
yeah,
Yeah, typically we deal with more premium products, but yeah, I think where you're going, again, I love to find people who are open to challenging the status quo of their business and understanding that, hey, it gets back to the first thing we talked about is being able to acknowledge in a group of people that I either have challenges or questions. I think it's when you open yourself up to that in business where you go, I'm not the expert here. I'm very good at what I do, but I'm not the expert in the room when it comes to branding or storytelling. And I think when you open it up and you accept, input, it creates really good opportunities for you. And that's really where I thrive as a business person and we thrive as a business is when we get that business owner that goes, either I'm starting something I think is very exciting, but I don't know how to get other people excited about it, or I have a great business right now, but we're not growing, or we're just at a point where I don't know what the next step we should take is. That's where we get involved and we go through a discovery process and we get those bubbles coming up from the bottom. And all of a sudden, it gets people so energized to get back into business, to really dig back into their business and show up and have new avenues to explore. Again, it's create that like that fear mentality of like, this makes me nervous, but I'm really excited about that because that's really what we get into business for. If everything were smooth sailing all the time, it could get very boring. So, we want to create those moments of anxiety, but like well-founded fear and based off, a good process.
love that. Adam Ross, AR Design. Where can people find you, man? If they're curious, like I want to chat with Adam or learn more about you, what you do. Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, ardesign.us is our website. It's a good place to go. AR Designers on Instagram. And then on the supplement side, if people, we haven't really hit on it, but Italic.life is the brand of supplements, and that's geared towards people like myself who are, super busy with both family life, work, and are just feeling like they're, what they're either taking in through, food or sleep or whatever is just not getting them where they want to be. And they start to feel like their brain is not as sharp as it used to be. Italic.life was created really to kind of create a perfect little supplement set for that. So Italic.life and ardesign.us.
Amazing. Adam, thanks so much for investing your time with us.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you, Brad. This is awesome. Good conver.
yeah, great conversation. And guys, I hope you take this seriously. Adam is an expert in his field. And I think if you're running a business, you owe it to yourself to have a conversation with Adam, or at the very least, just to kind of start exploring what it means to have an emotional storytelling driven brand and not just a commodity race to the bottom. Not a fun spot to be.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for joining. Adam, thanks for being on the show. And we will catch you guys next time on the Believe in the Lead podcast.